Now, welcome to online lectures where we are going to continue with our studies of mathematical physics. And here I want us to have a small look at, or a slight look at, functions of complex variables, and then analyticity, which is a very important concept in mathematical physics. So quickly I will get to the section that involves the notes that we need to first understand. How do we describe, or how do we understand these functions of complex variables? Now, if to each of a set of complex numbers, which variable z may assume, okay, some people call this z. Of course, here it looks like something else, but I know it is z, and believe it. There corresponds one or more values of a variable omega. Then omega is called a function of complex variable z, i.e., if you have this as a function, then we know the function is described as fz. Now let's look at this function. For instance, these functions have real parts, okay, and imaginary part, where we have this complex I, which is root -1. Okay. Now when we talk about real parts and imaginary part, they become so critical when you come to the time when we are trying to prove analyticity and any other aspect of complex variables. Now let's take, for example, there's an example here which is talking about fz. Okay, fz is basically z squared plus 1. Our work here is to try to look at the forms, the real part and the imaginary parts that come as a result of z squared, then simplify it and then include the 1 so that we can obtain our u and our v. Okay, now where z is x plus yi. Okay, so let's substitute this into this so that we have square of that will be what we find in these two brackets. Okay, when you do simple multiplication, this will be x, and this x gives us x squared. X and yi will give you xyi. The same will happen between this x and this, so that we end up with what we have here. Yes, and then we have yi times yi gives us y squared, I squared. Okay, but I squared, let's remember what we had I for. I is root -1. So if you square that, you end up with a -1. That's the reason for this negative here. So we have negative y squared, and there was a +1 which we had in our function, okay, which is here. So we want to this expanded form, we want to simplify it so that we end up with a u part and a v part, which is our real and imaginary part. So you bring this 1 together with negative y squared with x squared to form this. So x squared minus y squared plus 1, then there is the imaginary part, which is just but 2xy, then I out there. So that simply makes us have our u as x squared minus y squared plus 1, our v as 2xy. So this is the real part of this function, and this is the imaginary part of